Who's going to have the most disappointing season in the AFC, Sam?
So I've said for a while that I think, Miami got dramatically better and still might not make the playoffs because of what everybody else did, right? So Miami, I think, would be one of my teams immediately that I think they will be a much better team this year. They addressed the right areas. They had a good offseason. But I just don't think it's going to be enough given the arms race that everybody else went on and the fact that, we expect Buffalo to win that division. The Patriots might be good as well. It's just tough. So Miami, I think, would be the first one to highlight of a team that I think got better, will be good, but just miss out through the numbers involved in the AFC.
I do Tennessee radio as you do a lot, and having to go talk about the Titans and how, look, we had their roster ranked 20th this offseason. That might not directly correlate just because they play in the AFC South. And I do like Mike Vrabel. I think he'll bring it together. Yeah, but the Titans could be that team that disappoints after being the number 1 seed last year.
That division is kind of interesting because Jacksonville, Houston should both still be pretty bad. They're 2 of the 3 teams that we're sort of ruling out from this conversation, and then you have Indianapolis and Tennessee, both of whom I think feels like they're not really in this contender level of the AFC where there's all these great teams and, the arms race that everybody's gone on. And Tennessee in particular kind of went sideways while everybody else was going forward. Indy, I think you could argue, maybe did get better and, flipped Carson Wentz for Matt Ryan, all those kinds of things. But Matt Ryan is not what he once was and all those kinds of things. Anyway, it sort of feels like both those 2 teams they're not where everybody else is in terms of true contenders. But one of them's going to win the division, right? And that immediately obviously puts you in the playoffs, and then all you need is, 1 or 2 games where you live up to your potential as opposed to a whole run of 13, and it's a different conversation. So I kind of feel like neither of those 2 teams is in the true contender level in the AFC, but one of them is going to be around when those games are taking place, and that, it obviously gives them a ticket.
I think the Jaguars could be much better than expected. Even last year at this time, I think we were talking ourselves into over on their win total, which was probably 6 or 7. We were talking ourselves into this, and year 2 Trevor Lawrence, man. We could see a special year 2 Trevor Lawrence, which could change everything, and then you lose the baseline of Urban Meyer and raise that to Doug Peterson, and everything gets better. Don't sleep on the Jags. Here's the other thing I'm being talked into this offseason. The Raiders fans are just chipping away at me, Sam, on us.
Oh, God.
Even though I'm more of the guy in favor for the Raiders.
Yeah, you're in their camp. You're you're Mr. Raider. The rest of us hate
Mr. Raider.
It's just you.
My boss is a Raiders fan. I'm trying to keep Rick happy. You know what I mean? The more I think about if my theories are correct, the idea that you go get 3 or 4 guys that you can't cover, is there anything better than the Raiders having Devontae Adams, Darren Waller, Hunter Renfrow out there, right? You've got 3 different body types, 3 different types of receivers who all know how to get open. Derek Carr is going to elevate his game, presumably with Devontae Adams. So maybe I should be a little bit higher on the Raiders. I'm bringing this back to, could the Broncos disappoint, right? Another team that we've been saying all they need is the quarterback. All they need is the quarterback. I believe all of that. I believe they're moving in the right direction. The roster's looking excellent. What if Russ just isn't the same?
Yeah.
Right? Last year was the finger injury. You could use that as an excuse. But regardless, the last year and a half of Russell Wilson has not looked anything like the previous rest of his career. Is that a trend or was that a blip? And so I'm just posing that more as a question. Like, if Russ came out there and was posted another 75, 80 grade rather than a high 80s grade like you would expect from him, the Broncos could disappoint. And that's dependent on, is Russell Wilson, who's getting older, he's maybe lost a bit of a step from an athleticism standpoint, something that's been a huge part of his game. So it's not crazy to believe that Russ isn't the same Russ anymore.
I'm sorry. We're talking about Russell Wilson in decline at the age of whatever he is, when Tom Brady's out here at 152 years old, still plodding away.
But Russ is short. He's short, right? Short quarterback.
That man.
Yeah,
so
that's when it starts to catch up to them.
Whatever Tom Brady's been doing with the TB12 and the avocado ice cream and stuff, Russell Wilson has apparently been paying like $1 million a year for recovery for his entire career. Like that, if anybody is going to...
It didn't work last year. It didn't work.
It's because he broke a finger. That didn't, that's not a declining issue. That's like somebody mangled his hand. But, like, if anybody is going to, extend the prime years of his career, it had better be Russell Wilson, given the amount of money he's paid on that throughout his career.
There's a lot of investment there. I'm just saying that it is a possibility. And at the end of the year, if you're talking about disappointing years, it's that in combination with playing the Chargers, playing the Chiefs.
Yeah, I mean, the division. Somebody is going to end up not looking great from that division when they're probably a very good team. Honestly, it could be any of them.
The Chiefs were a fine line. I mean, they ended up with the number 2 seed. I mean, they were very close to being, like an 8 or 9 win team last year. I know you could say that for a lot of football teams, but if you get the breaks going the wrong way, could the Chiefs disappoint because of that stacks division? I don't believe it. I think they're the best still. But, could the Chiefs disappoint after all their offseason turnover?
Yeah, I mean, look, we talk about having Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid and having them sort of locked down. It's going to make the Chiefs contender every single season. This is the same way it did with New England, where, Tom Brady, Bill Belichick, et cetera, and they went on that run where they had double-digit wins for, almost 20 years. But particularly in this year, this AFC, this season of contenders, if the Chiefs lose a couple of games they're not expected to, and they win 10 games or 11 games, you could conceivably miss the playoffs this year with that kind of record, right? Because we're talking about this arms race and how good everybody is. Now, okay, a lot of them are going to play each other and it's going to shake out a little bit, but this could be one of those years where you're going to need 11, 12 wins, to make the playoffs. So if Kansas City has a slight off couple of games and they only end up with 11 wins or 10 wins, it could make them miss particularly if they lose a couple of them in the division, and the Raiders stop playing cover 1 and cover 3 every snap against them, and all of a sudden they struggle to beat the Raiders. Things could happen where all of a sudden this perennial contending team does not win all the games they're expected to and miss out. I don't think it's going to happen, but it is possible.
Not to completely turn this into the pessimism show that you have completely dominated. You and Austin, rest in peace. If in classic Steve fashion, I'm just going to answer every team, and then we'll point back to the show where I told you that team would disappoint. The Chargers could disappoint because that's what they do. They're the Chargers. The Browns could disappoint because we know Deshaun Watson's probably not going to play football for a while.
Might be starting Jacoby Brissett all year.
Yeah, it could be Jacoby Brissett. Even if Watson's back, he still only has one elite season under his belt from a PFF standpoint. The Browns could disappoint. The Ravens could disappoint because, Lamar Jackson, is he ever going to be what he was in 2019? The Patriots have no secondary and on paper didn't add enough this offseason compared to other teams in their division. The Bills are always going to break our heart because that's just what they do. They just can't win the Super Bowl, so they're going to disappoint because the expectations are so high. So every team is going to disappoint.
Every team.
Go Jags.
Okay. I think you can kind of get to the number reasonably quickly, though. 16 teams in the conference, 7 of them are going to make the playoffs. We're already writing 3 of them off before we start in terms of just not being good enough, the Jets, the Jags, and the Texans. I think Miami is going to underwhelm a little bit. One of Tennessee or Indy are not going to make the playoffs. One of them has to. I think Pittsburgh, as much as Mike Tomlin works miracles and the man never has a losing season, again, in this year of all years, if the man gets above 500 with Trubisky/Kenny Pickett, the quarterback, that would be a minor miracle. I know he did it with Duck Hodges and Mason Rudolph, but again, it's a different league, right?
If you're putting the Steelers in this good group, I would pick the Steelers to be one of the disappointing teams because I don't think they're as good as the other teams.
I mean, we talked about one of the teams in that AFC West is going to underwhelm relative to the rest of them just because you can't have all 4 of them dominating. They're going to take wins off each other. If I was picking one of the 4, I'd pick the Raiders. You'd probably pick Denver.
Sure.
So one of those teams, we're getting, we're zeroing in pretty quickly on your playoff field from the AFC.